Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Labor Live at 12:05. My name is Alex Jorgensen, and I'm the Communications Director here at the Alaska AFL-CIO. Now, our last couple of weeks, or last couple of Labor Lives, we've covered a variety of really important issues, from the status of our public schools, the necessity to fund them and increase funding. We've talked about how cuts to Medicaid could drastically impact the ability of thousands of Alaskans to access healthcare. And just as an overall statement, it has been a crazy 6 weeks, not only to the start of the legislative session, but also the start of Trump's second term. And amongst all that noise, amongst all that negativity, amongst all the chaos that I think a lot of us are feeling, there are indeed shining beacons of light. And that's why I am thrilled to introduce today's special guest, someone I've worked with a lot in the past, Rebecca Owens. She is the AFA-Alaska Council 30 Mobilization Chairperson, and she is one kick-ass union fighter that has been fighting for workers ever since I've known her. And I am so excited to have her on the program to talk about the incredible contract that flight attendants here at Alaska Airlines got recently.
Well, thank you for having me. We couldn't have done all this without you guys. So
No, I mean, you guys were out there. I remember. I mean, when could you kind of walk us back of when all of this started? When did all the kind of initial contracts fight at Alaska Airlines start?
It's kind of a long version here, but I'll be quick with it. So we entered into negotiations for this current contract in 2022. So to get to this point, it was about a 2-year process.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. And so during COVID was when we would have originally started negotiating. I was not at the airline yet, so I can't speak to that point in time. So it's been a long time. Our work group has been waiting for increased work rules, money, and as you know, the economy is it's tough right now. So this was a very, very long 2 years, but we're here.
But you're here, yeah. And
yeah.
I mean, 2 years, that's a long time. And I think a lot of people don't realize how tough these contract fights can be, right? Because you're not dealing with, your mom and pop airline operation here, right? You're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar, multinational, oftentimes corporation.
Yep, exactly. And, the other thing, because of the Railway Labor Act, our contracts don't actually expire. They become amendable. So us only fighting for 2 years is kind of it actually is a victory. Our friends at United Airlines, who are also AFA carriers, I believe they're in year 5 of fighting for their contract. So
Wow.
these contracts can be pretty ugly and tenuous.
Right. Yeah. And I know for the folks at home, huge differences between the Railway Labor Act and the National Labor Relations Act, which kind of covers the majority of other workers that aren't working in the aviation or transport industry. And that could be a whole nother Labor Live episode. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. But could you kind of walk us through? I mean, you guys recently voted on your second tentative agreement. I think it was like 95% in favor. And it seemed like an incredible contract. Could you kind of walk us through a few of those highlights?
Yeah, some of the big things are, the pay raise. Those are fantastic. We also achieved boarding pay, which, as most people may know by now, because we've been yelling about it for a while, boarding is the most complex point of our normal day-to-day operation, and we weren't paid for that previously. So securing that boarding pay that's a huge jump in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's wild. I cannot think of a single other job in the United States where people are required to be at work, are working. I mean, it's not like you guys are just sitting around. I mean, you're actively working, welcoming passengers on, ensuring safety, and you weren't getting paid. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, there's either 3 of us at our airline, at least there's 3 of us or 4 of us trying to get, anywhere from 150 to 170 people organized into a tube. and it's pretty complex. So to not be paid for it was a lot. And it would take a whole nother labor live to go into my soapbox of
For
the
sure.
history of the airline industry. But
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah. So
those
any other kind of big highlights from the contract?
yeah, there's some big gains and things. It was previously pretty cheap for the company to reassign us. So without going too in depth, there's two different kinds of flight attendants. There's reserve flight attendants and line holders. So one is a group that's kind of on standby to replace line holders, and then line holders bid for their trip and they get their schedule in advance. And you kind of plan for that, right? Our bags are small. If you're going to Hawaii, you're not going to pack a winter coat.
Right.
But it was previously pretty cheap for the airline to move a line holder to something else. So you get to the airport. I recently was supposed to go to Seattle and ended up in Kodiak. And
Wow.
so this contract kind of secured a quality of life improvement in that now it's very expensive for the airline to change
Mm.
where we're going for the day. So those kind of things they're big leaps.
Absolutely. Those sound like huge wins. I mean, you got increases, significant increases in pay. You got finally, for the first time in the history of Alaska Airlines flight attendants, getting paid partially for boarding time. You have work-life balance. I mean, those are all things I think people are looking for when they're fighting for a union contract. And that is really the union difference. Because I can tell you, they're not providing all that at other airlines that might not be unionized. And if they are, it's only because they know that if they don't, their workers are going to get unionized like that. Shout out to Delta.
I was going to say it's a union busting technique that's commonly used of, look what we can do. And, they don't improve the work rules. They just
right.
maybe improve the pay a little bit. So
Right.
it's.
Now, so you got this huge contract, huge victory for all of the flight attendants at Alaska Airlines. Do you think, or could you kind of share a little bit about what you think were some of the aspects in that contract fight that made a big difference? Like what kind of pushed you guys over the edge to get that contract that you guys actually deserved?
Us,
Yeah.
our union, in the sense of our flight attendants, we stepped up. We emailed, when we needed to email. We called when we needed to call. We showed up to pickets, and not only that, our whole labor community showed up for us. So we're a relatively small airline in the grand scheme of things. But the labor community built us up to this big, it's the big fish eating the shark, and it was pretty amazing. It was, over the last year, especially when things started to break down and we had to really up our mobilization efforts. Everyone showed up for us. So, for example, when we switched into our red lanyards and our red pins, I can't tell you how many people from the labor community said, I need one of those. I want to wear them on your jets, and I want your people to know we're there. And half our pickets were flight attendants, and half were just the labor community, and it was powerful. So all of us, are really how we got to this point.
Workers really do make the difference, and that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what unions are. Unions aren't some, big corporation. It's a group of workers standing together, hand in hand, fighting for what they deserve. And I'll just say from the outside, it was so powerful every time you guys had a picket down at least I got to see Ted Stevens because based here in Anchorage.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were out. You guys were there every single time. There were hundreds of flight attendants there every single time. And I think that's a really a testament to, like you said, that your guys' contract was won because you guys showed up, because you got involved in the process. And that is something I think for all unions and all workers to really take note of, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're stronger together. It's just that simple, like we always say.
Stronger together. I love it. So I know that it does not end here. You guys won this great contract, but what is in store? What's coming down the pipeline for Alaska flight attendants?
Yeah, so this is it's kind of interesting because excuse me. So for this contract, it's a 3-year contract that we just signed with a 2-year early opener. However, because our airline is merging with Hawaiian Airlines, we have to negotiate a joint contract. So we basically have, just 2 or 3 weeks off, and the negotiating committee goes back to the table. And it's a new negotiating committee, and it's made up of Hawaiian flight attendants and Alaska flight attendants. But we're getting the chance. So instead of in 2 years or 3 years when we're still negotiating, we're going to be theoretically signing a new contract. So it's actually kind of exciting. You've probably heard us say over the process, it's 2 bites of the apple, but it is. It's exciting. It's a little daunting,
Right.
but very exciting. So we now have a chance to continue to improve upon the things we want to see continue improving. It's neat.
That's incredibly exciting, and I think it's a testament to the fact that it doesn't stop. The work never stops, and being an active and involved member in your local union doesn't end when the contract fight ends, right?
Never.
There's a new beginning every single day, and it's important for all of us to always be involved at every step in the process.
Yeah, you can't let up. You
Can't let up.
can't
Don't
let up.
never let your foot off the gas, because I can tell you the corporations, the wealthy and the billionaires, they never let their foot off the gas, and
Nope.
it's time that us as workers take note of that and start doing the same thing.
Exactly. You give them an inch and they're going to take a mile.
Exactly. Well, Becca, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thank you so much for all you have done for fighting for workers here in our state. Anything else you want to add before we end the program?
Just a thank you from our work group to the community, to our labor friends, and just a thank you. It's overwhelmingly heavy and exciting just to see how supported we were. So just a thank you from us to everyone. So, yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining the program. And folks, that has been Labor Live at 12:05 for this week. Next week, I know the past couple of weeks we've been covering some issues at the federal level, but we're going to focus back in on what's going on in the legislature. So make sure to tune in next week. Thanks for joining.